Hello, I'm Susan Schenck, a member of Citizens Exploring School Unification, CESU, and I'm here today to have a discussion with Dick Adams, the president of the organization, and CESU member Greg Huet. And we're here to discuss school unification between Newport and Middletown. Morning.
Morning. Morning.
Good. Let's get everybody on the same page, Dick. What is CESU, and what important local issue is being organized, or what is the organization working on in the in the town of Middletown?
Well, CESU is a nonprofit incorporated under the laws of Rhode Island, and we meet regularly and to discuss school unification or regionalization, if you prefer that way. But I think we grew out of an event that occurred last year when the Newport School Committee and Newport Town Council requested to make a presentation to the Middletown Council, and the presentation was let's talk. Let's figure out how to do some regionalizing of either the high school or the entire two districts. The upshot of that was they made a very powerful presentation. It had to do with how do you finance a new schools and so forth if you regionalize. And the upshot of that was the council voted to not discuss or consider or in any way talk about school unification or regionalization. Well, for most of us, that was somewhat of an appalling decision because we felt like, number one, the citizens have a right to weigh in on this, and number two, that it is something that has some merit of its own. What we have done with CESU is we've gathered together people who are interested in the subject. Some are convinced that it's a good idea. Others that we simply need to explore it more thoroughly. As I said, we meet regularly on Mondays, and I think our membership now it's in flux. It changes, but I think we're a dozen, 24 people at our meetings. And what we are doing as a primary focus right now is putting together. We have put together a petition to go to the town council in Middletown, asking that the referendum be put on the ballot in November that would allow the citizenry to express their opinions about the subject of regionalization. I think that is something that we'll continue with, and for those that are interested, we'd be delighted to have you sign, whether you're undecided or whether you're absolutely decided that you like the idea. Then we want to see your signature on that, and then we'll move ahead with our petition. I think one of the things that CESU does is we also try to one degree or another, discuss the various areas that you have to consider in the course of trying to explore regionalization. And I can give you an example of some of the subjects that we would discuss: governance and administration, finances, affordability, debt obligations, staffing changes, educational program changes, facilities, transportation, school spirit, and extracurricular and sports activities. All of these things are affected by a regionalization or unification. We have at various times considered not simply, but limiting our regionalization or unification activities to high schools. But I think we are gradually seeing the advantage of talking about combining the Newport and the Middletown school districts in their entirety. I think it's clear that when you think that through for a moment, that what you end up with is that the high schools are the ones that would be most obvious for unification. Elementary schools would not be affected because they exist for their neighborhoods, or in the case of Newport, of course, they have one large Pell school. I think there would be also in the middle school area, they'd probably maintain or either create a unified middle school or maintain them in their separate configurations. But I think that what our organization really realizes that we're talking about, in Middletown at any rate, a high school that is now 70 years old, and that to fail to even discuss this or to come to some way is to force our kids to live in a world of a high school in particular, which is out of date and which would have a maximum of 600 kids. Well, I think that it doesn't take much figuring out and studying the issue at all to know that that's just too small a group of student body to provide the educational opportunities that kids need. I just, to my mind, it's just sort of an appalling notion that we want to forever have the students of Newport be limited to what a 600 student body school could offer. Newport has its own problems. Of course, Newport's facilities are not are in need of replacement.
That would be the Rogers High School facility.
That'd be the Rogers High School, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Middletown may be 5-6 years away from that same decision. So it's not something that you can just ignore, as the town council has done. So we, as concerned citizens, simply believe that we have to reach out to the community and try to put something on the ballot that says, yes, we need to first put together a plan for how you might do this, and then that plan would then go before the voters later on. The whole thing, of course, is governed by state law on the subject. So there is at no point would it be something that would be done unilaterally. It would have to be approved by the citizens of Middletown and Newport.
Can I go to Greg?
Yeah, sure.
Let me just go to you for a minute. So what Dick has described is a grassroots organization, very much operating at the community level. So talk to us about a citizens referendum. Okay, so with the town council in Middletown was not interested in having further discussions. What were the next steps that were available to us? Talk about a citizens referendum, what that does and doesn't mean, and the details of that as well.
Okay. I want to add one point to what Dick said about the organization first. We're a nonpartisan group.
Right.
Yeah.
Our meetings are open. And because we're a nonprofit, we depend on donations, which you can make on our website. On the referendum, so when the town council, this was a referendum back about 5 years ago, and the town council, when they made their decision, a lot of them, other than Barbara Von Villas and Terry Flynn, were the two that voted for to have the discussion. And the discussion, all that the citizens asked for was to have the discussion to appoint a committee with Newport so that all of the logistics and the contracts could be worked out so that the citizens would have a foundation to vote on. And the town council refused to have that discussion. And so that's why CESU was formed, to get information to the citizens. And so when the council made that decision, a lot of them said, well, that was already voted on and the citizens didn't want it. Well, that was 5 years ago, and a lot had changed in 5 years. And when the presentation that was made that the council voted on, the council gave the town administrator, Sean Brown, very direct orders to give the presentation, and that presentation was very one-sided and didn't reflect all of the facts of school unification. And a lot of the citizens that were at the town council that night only heard that one side. So our organization has been trying to get all the information out there on our website so that we could have that for the citizens. So when we went out and got our petition, the first petition was to try to get the town council to revisit that decision.
Right.
And so we got over 1,000 signatures of citizens in Middletown and took that in December to the town council, and the town council said, You haven't, why don't you take this to the school committee and talk to them? And we said, well, the school committee is not the one that shut down this discussion, it was you. But CESU went ahead and we talked to the school committee and had that discussion with them. The school committee has had no public discussion or has not taken a public position on school unification issue. So that left us with the only alternative that we had to get a petition signed by registered voters, and we have to get 10% of the registered voters in Middletown to sign the petition to force the town council to appoint a committee with Newport. And once we get 10%, and we have to get that by April 1st.
And that figure is 1,200?
It's I'm waiting on it's roughly 1,200. It's 10% of the registered voters as of on the 2019 list.
Okay.
And so I don't have that exact number. It's 1,100 and some, but so we're using 1,200. So when we get the petitions, and I take them to the town clerk, and they credential each signature. When we get to 1,200, that will force the town council to appoint a committee with Newport to look at all the logistics and the contracts and to come up with a solution or a proposition for the voters of Middletown to vote on in 2021.
So we would have the citizens referendum on the November ballot in 2020.
Yes.
The voters would hypothetically approve it, hypothetically, right? And then from there, the town council would appoint representatives from Middletown to meet with representatives from Newport to begin this discussion around the benefits and challenges of school regionalization for Newport and Middletown. So, yeah, good.
So I think one thing to add to that is that, as I mentioned a little earlier, that the whole process of regionalizing any school systems in Rhode Island is governed by state law. And that law actually is one of these curiosities in which it's actually quite easy to read it and understand what's involved. And what is involved is almost a checklist. In fact, it is a checklist. It's these are the things you have to consider. You really have to worry about staffing changes, some of them I mentioned earlier. You have to worry about what to do with existing debt obligations. You have to come up with a plan for how to merge unions. And I think the basics there are a phrase that's often used in that context. It's called hold harmless. In other words, you don't do anything that's going to hurt existing staff, existing teachers, and so forth. It is not a simple process, and we're not trying to portray it as such. What we're saying is that first, the citizenry need to say, is there an overarching advantage to having a school that represents or that provides the kind of opportunities and courses and so forth? Is that something that is attractive? And I think for a lot of us, and I think I'm certainly one who has come to the conclusion that we really do need to look at this seriously. There are many models for how this is done. There's 3 at least regional school systems in Rhode Island.